Hey everybody, it's Shelly Kramer. Welcome to this week's edition of V3 Live, the Internet of Things. My guest today is my dear friend and frequent collaborator, Shawn Elledge. Shawn is the CEO and founder of a company called Sales Lead Automation, and he's also the founder of a series of events called the Integrated Marketing Summit and DemandCon. And one of the reasons that Shawn and I collaborate so often is because Shawn is truly a genius, and he does not, by the way, pay me to say this about him, but when it comes to marketing automation, when it comes to lead gen and lead nurturing, there is nobody smarter. And so I love working with him, and I love learning from him, and I figure if I love learning from him, you'll love learning from him as well. So Shawn, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much, Shelly, for the kind words.
Well, you know, I'm not always nice, and I have to tell everybody that Shawn lives here in Kansas City with me, and he is sporting what I call the Royals beard situation, the good luck beard, although he claims it's not for that, but anyway, it's all over the city, so I'm going to choose to say that's what he's doing. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about sales lead automation, and you know, I think that there's not a better time for this than now because we're in the last part of the year. People are working on their marketing budgets. They're trying to figure out how to get more leads. They're trying to figure out how to get their arms around marketing automation. And so I'm excited because I think this is really important and the timing is really important. So what we want to talk about today is we want to talk about, you know, when you're thinking about kicking off your lead gen strategy or program. Shawn, tell us what the most important things to think about are. Where do we start?
Well, I think you have to understand just what your funnel looks like and understand just how does someone kind of go through from inquiry through to purchase decision. So I think on this first slide, I actually have an image. It really outlines a lot of that. So, you know, you've got you've got graphics. Basically, you've got the top of the funnel, which is your marketing touch, and that marketing touch, that's basically when you send out a campaign. Who are you touching with this? Is it an email campaign, display? No matter what the campaign is, you're touching someone somewhere, and then out of those touches, you're going to have some inquiries. Someone's going to respond. So if they respond, and that response could be a click-through, it could be signing up, registering for a webinar. It could be downloading a white paper, but whatever kind of response you had in that original campaign, that touch, they took it, they responded, and then out of those, so many of those people are going to become qualified. Clearly, not everyone's going to be qualified that downloads your content, but you're looking for those as a marketer to figure out, okay, here's my campaign, here's a call to action, here are the people who responded, out of those, who's actually qualified or a good fit to work with our company. And then out of those, sales only will accept so many of those leads because, you know, sometimes even with marketing automation platforms and technology in place, someone might appear to have the right criteria, but you might find out that it's just a guy in an apartment with a dog who's downloaded research on your company for some, you know, I don't know, some just basic research. And so they're not really qualified. So there's going to be a certain amount of leads that you generate as a marketer that sales just isn't going to like. But then there's the ones that sales goes, hey, you know what, this is a great lead. I'm gonna assign an opportunity to it. I'm going to put that in my CRM. Maybe it's like Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics, whatever you're using. They're going to go, okay, here's Bob Jones. He works at the right size company. He's got budget. This looks like an opportunity. I've talked to him. I've qualified it. And now he's in my pipeline. So I think that's kind of the first thing.
I like it. I like it. So, well, that makes sense, starting at the beginning. So let's talk about now, you know, everybody wants to know how we can move leads through the funnel. Okay? So walk us through how we get someone from one point of the funnel to another point of the funnel.
Well, that's a good point. That's actually the most challenging piece of this whole puzzle. If you look at the next slide, we've got study done by Serious Decisions, did this cross-industry average for B2B companies, and they said, look, on average, the number of inquiries you generate from a campaign or a touch is on average 2 to 5%. Now, some marketing pros says it's like 0.5%. So, but basically what we're trying to do here is we're trying to figure out, okay, just what can I expect as a marketer? How am I going to move them through the funnel, and what can I expect? How do I plan and forecast for this? And I think this report's kind of interesting. So let's say, as an example, I send out 10,000 emails, and I get, let's say, 3.5% to actually respond. They clicked on my call to action, they did whatever it was I was after. So that means I have 350 of those people actually move on to the next phase. Out of those 350, only 4 to 8% are going to be qualified. Now, some statistics will go as high as 10%, but generally speaking, you're not going to have any more than 10% of those people be qualified. So let's say we take 6% of those people, and then so now we're down to 21 people. Now, out of the 21 people, only 45 to 75% of those leads are even going to be accepted by sales. So now I'm down to 12.6 actual opportunities out of the original 10,000 person campaign. And then out of those, there's going to be 40 to 60% of those are actually going to result in a opportunity. So you might walk away with 2 to 4 deals out of 10,000 touches. So it's not a lot. That's really the big challenge, I think, that marketers have. And I think the only way to really move those folks successfully through the pipeline is to start thinking about your content strategies and how you're going to move them along. So that gets us to the next slide that I've got in place. It's kind of a simplified approach to this.
Hey, let me stop you for just a second and say, though, I think going into it with this mindset is really important. And I think that at least what I see with clients all the time is that they're not doing this math. They're not thinking about this. They're just thinking about, oh, well, we're going to go and get a whole bunch of leads, and isn't it going to be awesome? And that's not how it works. But the reality of it is, if you go through this process and you end up with 2 to 4 deals, depending on the size of those deals, that's not a bad thing. So I think that, to me, the message here is do the math first. Understand what it is you're looking for. Communicate that to your senior leadership. Understand when you go down the marketing automation path that this is what you can expect. Because once you manage those expectations, I think it changes everything about your chances for success.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. You and me, one of the things that we've shared in common for a long time is our affinity to just numbers. I mean, we can play with this and test campaigns and all that, but the reality of it is, without any really hard facts and numbers in place and industry statistics, it's hard for us to manage what we can't measure.
Right.
And I'm a big believer in this, and that's why I like these things. It doesn't mean your company isn't gonna go one way or the other in regards to, am I going to be an average? Is this what I can count on? It might not be, but at least it gives me a framework to go, this is what I should be trying to obtain. I want to be best in class on all of these numbers, and if I'm tracking the stages of these leads throughout the funnel, if I'm tracking these metrics, then I can become best in class. And if I'm not, then there's really no chance of doing it.
Well, and if you're not setting some benchmarks and some goals, and you don't have anything in mind at the onset of what you're going to measure, I'm not sure how. I'm not sure. It's like going on a road trip without a roadmap, which sometimes can be fun, but not when it's marketing dollars that we're talking about. So let's talk now about your next slide in the series.
Well, yeah, it's funny you say that. I meet with a lot of folks, and I sit down and I chat with them, and really one of the first questions I ask them is, what's your revenue goal for the year? And you'd be surprised how many people give me that deer in the headlight look. They're like, you know what? We really don't know. We just want to grow. And I just really kind of freaks me out, because it's like, well, wait a minute, guys. I can't work like that with you. I need a hard number. Give it to me. And so recently I was at a company, and they said, look, we want to grow 10 million this year. So it was great. They actually had a number. It took them a little while to get there, but they're like, okay, 10 million. That's really what we want. I'm like, super. So then I asked them through the slides, I said, okay, what's the next step? What's your percentage of sales should come from marketing generated leads? Because you really got a few different ways to generate leads. Most companies anyway. You've got field sales, your outside salespeople, they're going to generate leads. Marketing is going to generate leads. And in some cases, you might even have teleprospecting leads or inside sales generated leads. On average, companies should plan on 40 to 60% of all the lead, marketing should generate those leads, 40 to 60%. So in this case, we'll put 50% down of the 10 million number. So marketing is responsible for sourcing 5 million of that $10 million number. Now I'm getting somewhere. Okay, now I know what I got to do. Then my next question is generally is, what's your average sales size? In their case, it was 70,000. And then I look at it and I go, okay, what's the percentage of sales opportunities your company will win? And of course, most of the time, the VP of sales, well, you give us a good opportunity and we're going to close all of them. And
yeah. Okay.
Why am I here? Because you don't need me. But the reality of it is it's 20 to 30%. So if I put it on an average of say 25%, and that's an aggregate across a lot of B2B companies. Some companies may do less, some companies may do more. But on average, the statistics are clear. It's 20 to 30%. So no matter how great you think you are, those are the numbers. So unless you can prove it with hard evidence and facts and figures, then I'm going to go with an average like 25%. And then the next step would be, what percentage of your marketing responses, your inquiries, will become qualified? So okay, we threw out a campaign. We basically had a couple of inquiries. Out of those inquiries, how many actually become qualified? Now, that number is usually 10 to 40%. That could be all over the place. Serious Decision says a lot less than that. But I'm going to go with a 10% number. It's reasonable. It's pretty in par. Sometimes it'll be a little bit higher than that. You get up as high as 12%. But most times it's right around 12 or 10%. And then you go, okay, what kind of response rate do you expect to get out of your campaigns? Now, this is kind of the number that's most marketers get fixated on. 2%. Everyone pushes for that 2%. But the reality of it is marketing process, it's 0.5%. And the Serious Decision says it'll be as high as 5%. And I think what impacts that the most is, how well are you targeting this message? How well do you know your audience? What size of a campaign are you deploying? There's a lot of variables that make it up, but on average, it's anywhere from 0.5% to 5% is the response rate you guys should be expecting as marketers in the B2B world, that is.
And and my strategy is always, let's go in expecting the 5% or the 0.5%. Let's expect that. And if we blow that out of the water, then we are superheroes. But I think you really have to go into this, especially if you're new to this, especially if you're just at the beginning stages of understanding the importance of personalization, if you're working on really tailoring your content messages, set the bar where you can hope to reach it. I think that makes a big difference in really overall how your program, the success of your program.
Yeah, I'd rather be conservative and win. Always
every day.
Under promise, over deliver. That's always kind of the goal. So then what I'm doing with this calculator, and by the way, this calculator was Mac McIntosh's from Acquire B2B. He's one of our partners at Sales Lead Automation. And so, in fact, we're developing another calculator that has 3 rows. There's a marketing row, there's an inside sales or teleprospecting row or column, and then there's a field sales column, because we can now start to manage our business a little bit more effectively as opposed to just doing this as a sales lead calculator. But this works for the most purposes for my needs and my clients' needs. But the next question I usually ask is, well, how many salespeople do you have to follow up on these leads? And really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to determine how many qualified opportunities do I need to generate for each salesperson in order to get the kind of results that they're looking for, to get that $10 million number. And so as you scroll down through the sheet, this little calculator, what it will tell me is, okay, based on the numbers I've just plugged in, I need to touch 15,873 people a month. So now, let's say you've got only 7,000 people in your database. Well, if you talk to them more than once a month, that's 14,000 people. So you're really right at that number. But the idea is, how many touches do I need to generate or deploy to get the number of inquiries or responses I needed, to get the number of qualified leads I need, to get the number of sales accepted leads and sales qualified leads to get 71 new customers or $5 million in revenue. And so really what I'm trying to determine is what's my cost per touch and how many touches do I need to send out. And I'm trying to budget for that, for the initiative. So I generally play around with my cost per touch until I get to where my budget should be where it should be. Like in this case, I've got it set at 6.2% of budget. Now, for an SMB business, your marketing budget should be 8 to 12%. If you're an established business, but you're in a kind of a growth mode, it's 4 to 6%. So in this case, this company is a $175 million company, and so really they should be spending anywhere from 4 to 6% of their budget on marketing. So this plays in nicely. Now, if you're a large billion-dollar company, of course, it's more like 1 or 2% of your budget should go to marketing, because 1 or 2% of $1 billion is a lot of money. So you don't really need to spend more than that. But when I look at the calculator, it kind of says, okay, I need to generate 57 inquiries per salesperson a year, because I know if I generate that many inquiries per year, I'm going to get 6 qualified deals, and my salesperson is going to close at least half a deal a month, or 1 deal every 2 months, and he's going to reach his goal. So that's kind of, the calculator is really kind of a framework for what are we going to do. Okay, what's our goal? Give me an idea of what I'm going to have to do to obtain that goal in a kind of in a numerical fashion.
You mean you actually establish a goal before? You recommend doing that before we develop all the other content and tactics and all? Really? A goal first? That's awesome.
Earth-shattering, I know.
It is.
It's crazy.
It's awesome. Oh, God. This is like crack cocaine for me, Shawn. You know it. All right. Well, now let's move on and let's talk about, now we've got our goal. Now what?
All right. So now this is really where the rubber starts hitting the road. Now we're looking at buying stages, and we've really got to figure out, okay, how do we move that inquiry through the learn, solve, compare, and purchase? Now, this buying stage came from IBM. As you mentioned earlier, I own DemandCon, the Integrated Marketing Summit, a couple of educational events to help marketers who are hopefully are watching this today. But the idea is, when I saw this buying stage from IBM, I loved it. I thought it simplified, what are we really trying to accomplish as marketers? And really, what we're trying to do is reach people that think they might have a problem. I might have a problem. I need to learn about this. To solving a problem. How do I solve this problem? To compare, am I solving the problem the right way? And then ultimately purchase. Help me make a purchase decision. And so one of our speakers from IBM, who's in charge of all their North America demand generation strategies and practices, this is the process they adopted. And it was part of what they call conversational marketing. Now, a marketer will probably say awareness, consideration, blah, 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 purchase. It's a little bit of semantics here, but I like the fact that IBM put their selves into the mind of the consumer. They actually changed the buying stages to match that of the consumer, and I actually loved that. Now, is this too simple? It could be. It might be. But I like to start off simple and then expand on that. Now, Babcock and Jenkins, they've done a study on the different buying stages, and they think there's 8 stages. It's a little bit more complex. And however many stages you adopt, the idea is, okay, we've got a goal. We know how many touches we need to generate to reach that goal. Now let's start focusing on how to move a prospect or a new lead throughout the buying stages to finally making a purchase decision. And don't be surprised when you look at this for your own company that you do a really good job at the learn, solve, and compare stage, but you don't do a very good job at the purchase stage. Because a lot of companies I work with, I find that, wow, they really don't do a very good job of helping you make a purchase decision. They do a great job of talking about themselves, identifying problems and comparing the solutions. But when it comes down to actually helping that consumer make a purchase decision or make a business case to buy their product or service, I find there's generally a shortage of content.
Well, but some of that comes down to knowing who it is you're talking to, and we're lazy and we want the quick and easy button, and we are not spending enough time thinking about who it is we're talking to. So you're going to tell us a little bit more about that, aren't you?
Absolutely. In fact, I couldn't agree more. In fact, the next slide, we get into personas. Okay, so we understand whatever our map is for the funnel. We've got it down. We know how we want to move people through the funnel. And of course, it's not always a linear process. People are going to jump around. They're going to skip around when they're making a purchase decision. But at the end of the day, what I like what IBM did, which I think is fantastic, is with this whole concept of conversational marketing, is this idea of identifying a persona. And so they showed an example at one of our events called Lynn, the Chief of Police. And this was all around the Think IBM campaign. And they knew they had a good solution for analytics. And they knew that this analytics solution could help police chiefs reduce crime in their area. But they really didn't have a good understanding of that police chief, so they developed a persona. So they want to know, who is this person? What are their work habits? What are their challenges, in this case, reducing crime? What are their responsibilities? Who do they report to? Really important to know these kind of things. How much purchase authority do they have? In this case, the police chief has around $1 million per purchase authority. And then where is his role in this vendor selection? Is he an end user? Is he an influencer? Is he the decision maker? Where is he? And then do you have a relationship with that person already? With that company? What do they read? How do they measure success? But answer all the questions that you need to. And what's funny is if you go through this process of understanding who it is you're marketing to, you can actually have a conversation with them. And at the end of the day, you walk away with a very powerful sales enablement tool. Because now you could say, hey, new salesperson, here's the person you need to go after. And if you really want to understand him and have a conversation with him, you need to understand this guy. And basically, here's the cheat sheet. Here's what keeps them up at night.
Okay, I think that's awesome. So now we know this. Where do we go from there? Where do we go from here?
All right, so now you're like, okay, I have my goals laid out. I know how I want to move them through the stage of the funnel. I've got a good idea of who it is I'm marketing to, and I really don't like the word marketing. I kind of want to have a conversation with them, so I really need to get to know them. So I've built these nice personas, so I can establish credibility, understand them, hopefully build a relationship. Now, how do I apply that to my content marketing roadmap? How do I roll out my strategic roadmap? And so I like the next slide to help visualize it, because people are visual. I know I'm visual. I need to see it, because that sounds tough. I might have 15 different product lines and 4 or 5 different personas, and how do I manage all that? So I look at the world kind of like as a triangle. And at the top of the triangle, you've got your internal staff and communications, the board. And it sounds crazy, but this should be part of anyone's strategic roadmap, and I'll give you a reason why. If you can't internalize your message, and if everyone's not on the same elevator pitch, then you can't externalize it. So you need to spend a little bit of time and energy on just what the company's about and making sure everyone's on the same elevator pitch. Then below that is your customers. Clearly you make most of your revenue off your existing customers. Everyone knows it's more expensive to go out and find new ones. So what's your communication strategy with your existing customers is important. Now, I don't develop personas for my internal staff. It's just no sense in that. But I definitely develop some personas for my existing customers. As an example, generally speaking, there's at least an end user of my product or service, there's a decision maker, and there's usually a financial authority. So right there is 3 personas that I should be talking to them. And then I come across my grid and I go, okay, here's my persona for an existing customer. It could be end user, it could be director, whatever that title is. Then what stage of the content is this going to be mapped to? Well, I want to make sure he's happy with his purchase decision. Then I want to go to the next stage. What's my message? Why am I saying it? Well, I want to make sure that this person is convinced that he made the right purchase decision when he hired us. And then I look at the format. Okay, what format am I going to send this message to that persona or customer? And maybe it's an email campaign, video cast, blog post, a direct mail campaign. And the goal of it might be to either cross-sell, upsell, reduce churn, maybe increase the message to the format to the goal. Then I look at influencers. Who's influencing my marketplace? I look at social influencers, media influencers, analysts, and I'm not going to develop personas for those guys, but I definitely want to identify them. And then below those guys, if I have a partner or distribution channel, what's my communication strategy to support them? And then ultimately at the end of the triangle, the largest piece of this puzzle is our end users. Now, the reason why I put it in this format is it's inherently too expensive to go directly to the end user. So it makes sense to focus a lot of my energy above the end user because that does trickle down and influence that end user's buying decision. Now, when I get to the end user, I'm definitely going to develop personas and map it to the buying stages. And then, of course, to the format and to the goal. So that kind of gives me a nice little overview of how am I going to communicate this strategy to our prospects. Make sense?
It makes sense to me. So what's next?
So okay, so I've got a worksheet that we can send out to everybody that'll help them actually do this. So they'll basically do a content analysis and a gap analysis. Because what they'll do is they'll take a look at their existing content and they're going to map it to their roadmap and find gaps. They'll find content they can repurpose. They'll find content that they need to generate or create, and then identify those gaps. And then they're ready to go. Now they're ready to go. So now you might want to look at some technology. Like on this slide here, I'm a big fan of marketing automation. I worked for Eloqua. I'm an Act-On partner today, and I use a lot of marketing technologies. Next principles for social marketing automation. I'm using Madison Logic's content data segmentation tools. Just pretty cool stuff, which should be for another time. But a lot of people generally come to me and they go, Shawn, we want to do more with less. We want to automate things. What do you recommend? And I'm like, well, you really need a marketing automation platform because it allows you to do a lot of very sophisticated things. It could be any platform you pick. It doesn't matter to me. It could be Silverpop, it could be Oracle, Eloqua, which I'm a big fan of, Act-On, I'm a big fan of those guys. They've got great tools. But I think what I love about what you have to be careful about with marketing automation, I should say, is this chart right here. So Serious Decisions did another study on companies that had no marketing automation system in place versus companies that did have marketing automation but with no processes versus companies with marketing automation with average processes.
Well, and I want to stop here and say that you and I find this all the time, and people get the cart before the horse. They buy a marketing automation platform because they've fallen for some vendor's sales pitch somewhere without really understanding and having their own needs analyzed by somebody who's vendor agnostic. That's stupid, and it is a surefire way to spend a bunch of money and have it all be wasted. And the other thing is they may actually end up buying the right marketing automation platform, program, but they may not have any internal resources that know how to use the program or who can be trained to do that. And so then 6 months or 9 months down the road, you've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on a marketing automation platform, and it's failing, and it's failing in the eyes of the senior managers who agreed to let you do this. And it's not that the platform's failing, it's that you don't have the right processes and the right people, and you haven't thought about this, and you haven't made a plan from the beginning. So if this conversation can help you avoid that, it's really important.
Absolutely. In fact, I think anyone who's getting ready to buy market automation should do a search for Joby Bloom marketing automation failure. It's a great blog post on a company that purchased marketing automation, and they didn't have the system and processes in place, and it was a complete failure. But everybody chimed in on it, and it's one of the longest blog posts I've ever seen on the subject, and fantastic advice. But what I like about this chart is what Sirius came out with was it really kind of quantified it, and they said, look, on average, a company will spend about 100 grand on market automation. And what they looked at was companies that didn't have any processes or market automation in place. They on average would generate, say 1,000 responses, 850 would be flagged as leads. Only 5% would be actually followed up with or qualified by sales, and only 5 of those opportunities would actually turn into an opportunity, and then they'd win one deal. So basically, out of 1,000 leads, only one deal would result on average. Then they looked at companies that had no processes but did buy market automation, and they found, well, they did generate more responses, but at the end of the day, they actually only closed 1.2 deals versus one deal. So while they might have generated an extra $10,000 in revenue, they actually lost $90,000 on technology. So the big differentiator was the companies that had market automation systems in place, and also had processes. And what I mean by processes is, what is a qualified lead? Defining that, doing that with sales and marketing in the same room. You both come up with a service level agreement on what that lead looks like, what criteria do they have to have in order to be qualified, what behavior, how are those leads going to be managed, what kind of time frame, and you literally create a service level agreement between sales and marketing. It says, hey, this is what a lead looks like, and this is how we're going to handle it and manage it. And if it drops out, this is the process for putting it back into nurturing campaigns and things of that nature. Those people, even with just average processes, had a huge return on investment for adopting technologies like marketing automation versus ones that didn't. So process.
Awesome. So we're probably getting toward the end of our segment here. So let's wrap up. So what's the most important thing, to move forward? How are we going to help these people be successful?
Well, we've got a few tips and tools that we can, if they reach out to you or myself.
We have time. You can give us a couple of those. That's fine.
Well, yeah, I think they can reach out and I can email them, the calculator. So first, using a calculator to kind of help you identify what those goals are and get your mind around how many touches and campaigns do I need to deploy to help me reach that goal. So I think that's really step one. And then step two, then you got to kind of start to really do a content assessment and a health assessment of your organization. If you're planning on using technology, is my company really ready for technology? Do I have the DNA within this organization to support it? Because, VP of sales, if he's not behind this, forget it. You're going to fail.
It's not going to work.
Yeah. Not going to work. And then once you've mapped out where you've got those content gaps, then of course start working on creating that content. Because without content, that's the fuel for all of our marketing campaigns these days, whether it's being SEO or pay-per-click or marketing automation, lead nurturing, lead scoring, all that stuff. Without content, you're kind of dead in the water anyway. So,
I think the other point, and I happen to do this for a living, but in spite of that, I think it's really important to understand that you can't always do this all yourself. You know, sometimes you're so close to what it is you're doing, you can't step back, you can't look at this through the eyes of a customer, a prospective customer. And I think it's really more difficult than not to expect you and your existing team to be able to create all the content that you need to create. So that's when you might look for someone to collaborate with. You might look for some consultation help. You might look to work with some freelancers, because I think people get in their own way all the time with this, and it's a big hurdle.
Absolutely, and it also, you know, it slows down your time to market, and it actually increases your total cost of ownership. Right. So, you know, so really, I think all the way around. In fact, when I was at Eloqua, I was on the partner team, so I recruited agencies to use their technology on behalf of their clients. And I can tell you, it takes 3 months in the application, day in and day out, to really get your hands and around these technologies. So you really need to plan accordingly, because there's a ramp-up time here. And so if you've got someone that you're planning on using for market automation, and they're only going to do it part-time, well, now it's 6 months before they really understand how to use it.
Well, and you know, we've consulted with people before that, you know, kind of put marketing automation in a team member's lap with no prior experience, you know, and there's just so much to learn. And so again, if you really want to be successful at this, this is when it makes sense, especially given the investment that you've already made in a platform, budget the money to work with a consultant to help you get this right. It's too important to fail. And I think that, again, expecting to be able to handle it all in-house is a barrier that marketers put in their own way, and they fall over it all the time.
Yeah, I agree. And then the other thing you'll find out is that you actually utilize the technology capabilities at a greater percentage. I remember when I was I hate to refer to it all the time, but when I was at Eloqua, the companies that hired a consultant to work with them versus ones that didn't only use a very small percentage of the actual capabilities of the technology, and the ones that did use a consultant to help them ramp up their efforts, they actually use a larger percentage of the capabilities and had that much higher return on investment sooner. Yeah. So I hate to say it, unless you're going to dedicate the resources to it, it's something I would definitely urge a company to consider. And then, you know, find someone who'll work with you, work with your team, get them up to speed, do it simultaneously if you have to, but there's definitely a long curve to it.
So, Shawn, are you, I know that we're going to be in San Francisco together at DemandCon in November. I know you do workshops on this a lot. Are you doing a workshop on this topic in San Francisco?
We are. Me and Mac McIntosh have been doing a B2B lead gen workshop since the beginning of the year. It's a 4-hour-long workshop, and we basically walk customers or marketers through our process that we've kind of learned over the last, well, in Mac's case, over the last 20 years, in my case, for the last 8 or 10 years, in this specific role anyway. But we kind of walk them through a much more detailed roadmap on, and we also introduce them some new technologies they want to consider. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm testing some new applications that are showing some extremely powerful results. I mean, click-through rates 54%. I've never had a click-through rate like that in my life, but I'm doing it now with some new technologies that we're integrating with marketing automation. But we walk people through it, and it's a great program. So far, people have been receiving it really well, getting good feedback on it. So yeah, we'll be there on the 13th, November 13th. We'll be doing a workshop on B2B lead generation, qualification, and nurturing. And so love to have you come out. The event, and if that's not it, maybe you're more advanced. If that's not your thing, then you might want to check out the DemandCon event, because we've got programs on sales enablement, strategy.
Awesome sessions on content strategy and content marketing.
Yeah.
Don't miss sessions and workshops on that.
Yeah, you don't want to. I mean, we got LinkedIn's there. We've got SAP is there. We've got Intel is there. We've got some giant brands. I got Gartner there, Tiffany Bova from Gartner, and Ian Michaels from Gleanster. So it's a pretty cool event, and it's cheap. Compared to other events, it's like less than half of the cost of other events. So it's something I would consider.
Well, thanks, Shawn. Okay, so I always love talking about this because it makes my head hurt a little bit because and it gets me so excited because I think that there's just so much great information here, and it truly is a roadmap, and it's not an opinion that sales lead automation and marketing automation are the key to driving more revenue more quickly, greater profitability. It's not somebody's opinion, it's a fact. But if you're going to do it, you have to do it right. And so I think this is a terrific roadmap, and I thank you so much for hanging out with me as always. It's always a great pleasure to have you here and to be talking about this kind of thing. So thanks, my friend.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon. Bye, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us today. And I'll write a follow-up blog post on this topic and include a lot of these resources in here. And if we can see you in San Francisco in November, we would love to. So have a great rest of the day. We'll see ya.